worst economic crisis in its history hit the United States at the close of the 1920s and lasted into the 1930s. Millions were unemployed, and wages for those who kept their jobs were slashed dramatically. Two-thirds of the population struggled to make ends meet at some point during the Depression. Many of the unemployed waited in long bread and soup lines. Some were forced to migrate to look for work, but times were tough all over. The 1920s was a time of great prosperity and growth, due in no small part to the business-friendly policies of the administration. But after the bubble burst, the economic philosophy of the Herbert Hoover administration failed to ease the suffering during the Great Depression. Herbert Hoover believed in letting the economy set itself aright without government intervention. Market forces like supply and demand were self-regulating, and he believed that eventually the economy would right itself. However, many were suffering, and Hoover's wait-and-see philosophy made him appear indifferent and unconcerned with the plight of everyday people. In 1932, Franklin Roosevelt ran for office against Herbert Hoover, promising a New Deal of the cards. Unlike Hoover, Roosevelt was very sensitive to public opinion and pledged to do whatever it took to get the economy moving again. After his election, Roosevelt passed legislation immediately for Depression relief. One piece was the National Industrial Recovery Act, or NIRA. This legislation created the Public Works Administration, or PWA. The goal of the PWA was to employ as many people as possible for public projects. After the NIRA was ruled unconstitutional, Congress created the Works Progress Administration, or WPA, which worked the same way as the PWA. Since the ultimate goal of the PWA and the WPA was to keep as many people employed as possible, they were notorious for taking their time on a project, earning the nickname "We Poke Along." Some of the buildings they've built were very ornate and long-lasting. These buildings can even be seen in Tulsa today. The Fairgrounds Pavilion was one such project. It was started in 1932 and finished with resources from the PWA. It was designed by L.I. Shumway and still stands as an Art Deco wonder at the Tulsa Fairgrounds. It seats 6,500 and has 8 entrances. The walls are blonde brick with terracotta ornamentation, featuring scenes of livestock and farming life. A few hundred yards away lies the old National Guard Armory. The National Guard Armory in Tulsa was built by the WPA from 1940 to 1941. The simple design illustrates the principle of using unskilled workers and keeping artistry and craftsmanship to a minimum. This way, suffering unskilled workers could find employment. The armory is made from stone native to Oklahoma and was the second largest armory in the state. Will Rogers High School was built in 1939 by WPA workers and designed by Joseph Koberling. Will Rogers High School memorializes Oklahoma's favorite native son. The buff brick building has 2 large towers with terracotta capitals. Above the doors, Will Rogers' life is illustrated in 2 parts, his cowboy background and his career in movies. Webster High School was built in 1938 and was designed by Arthur Atkinson, J.D. Forsyth, Raymond Kerr, and William Wolliver. The buff brick building forms 2 symmetrical wings. 2 large rectangular columns frame the doors, the name of the school, and the clock. Cast aluminum plaques illustrate Greek motifs. In the Fairgrounds Pavilion, the old National Guard Armory, Will Rogers, and Webster High Schools, the PWA and WPA gave Tulsa some of their most iconic buildings that still stand today. They represent the hope of the workers that built them, that America is still the land of opportunity, even in difficult times.